First today to the UK and a theatre group that's hoping to make black people fall in love with the English playwright William Shakespeare by creating the UK's first all-black, all-female theatre company. It's called Mawa, which means tomorrow in a Bantu language spoken in some parts of southern Africa, and it's on a mission to create new boundaries. Already famous scenes from the great bard of Avon are echoing through Mawa's work in the British black community, things like Romeo and Juliet, Cleopatra and Hamlet, but arguably not quite as you've seen or heard it before, Shakespeare's work reinvented. Now, traditionally, British theatre has always been a space for white middle-class audiences, with just 10% from black, Asian or mixed backgrounds, and only 13% of these groups are part of the workforce, according to figures from the Arts Council of England.
Yes, a knocking indeed. If a woman were porter of Hellgate, hey, she should have all the turning the key. Knock, knock, knock. Who is there? In the name of Beelzebub. Here's a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty. Come in time. Have napkins in now about you because hey, you sweat for it. Who is there? In the other devil's name. What?
Well, for more on Mawa, the new all-black, all-female theatre group in the UK, I'm joined now on the line from the UK by the co-founder and executive producer of the Mawa Theatre Company, Jade Samuels. Jade, thank you so much for joining us. We have tried to make this happen, so we're glad that we finally got together. And Shakespeare is, of course, an enormous part of British life and identity, as well as, of course, the theatre industry all around the world. I mean, where do you see black people and mixed race people fitting in?
Well, as you said, it's so synonymous with British culture and who we are, and it's an institution. When people think of British theatre, you can't help but think of Shakespeare, but yet the roles don't exist for us. And a lot of the actors in Britain, they're classically trained, they go to drama school, and they learn the craft of Shakespeare, but they don't ever do it, job. So it's important that we claim the narrative around that and make space for those women don't see themselves in those places.
Right. So in a sense, you are trying to reinvent Shakespeare and create a new narrative of what he could possibly be.
Well, Shakespeare himself famously was an innovator. He made 3,000 works that now make up the British Oxford Dictionary. He was all about innovation and change and things moving forward. And I think he would have liked the idea of it being flipped on his head, that it was just men that used to play those roles, that we're just making it black women. I think he'd like that.
Right, you're breaking up a little there, but my next question is going to be, what made you decide to set up Mawa? I mean, I know you may have touched on it briefly, but I suppose the obvious answer is that you did it because you were tired of seeing too many people, mixed race people, black people, minorities and so on, taking a backseat.
Yes, that is exactly why. We had enough. We wanted people to see themselves in the work, young black women, young black girls that will one day take up the space in the stage in Britain. We wanted them to know that those roles were for those people as well, and it was so important. We didn't want them to feel like another generation feel like the work was not for them. So we thought by doing this, we're putting representation on the stage, and yeah, it's fabulous. We've had great responses, and women have loved it and said that they've understood Shakespeare in a way that they may not have before, because it's people who look and sound like them speaking those words, and that's really important to us.
Right. I was going to ask you what sort of impact this is having in the black community in the UK, but you've sort of peripherally answered it. But I mean, is your focus mostly on Shakespeare, or does it? I mean, are you just a theatre company that incorporates some Shakespeare?
At the moment, it is just Shakespeare. We feel that it is the tool we will use to make the changes moving forward. Who knows what will happen, but for the near and close near future, we need it to be Shakespeare. We want to explore Shakespeare, and there's so many texts for us to explore and so many things for us to look at. So it's important that we explore them and see where that goes with us. And I think classical text in general, it's owning those texts again and making them for our community.
Yes, absolutely. And that opening skit that we saw, a little clip that we saw at the beginning, that was a sort of black interpretation, or let me put it this way, perhaps a Caribbean African interpretation of Macbeth, was it?
The original thing that you saw, the lady doing the speech on her own, I think that was Ellen Thomas doing the Porter's speech, and she's a Nigerian lady, and it was really important that those words were spoken, and the language and the vernacular was said in a way that you could reclaim Shakespeare, and hearing the accents and hearing everything that Ellen brought to that role was so important, because it's such a funny role and she does it so well. So yeah.
I mean, I have to be honest, I think that's a brilliant innovation, because I'm well familiar with Shakespeare, but in the traditional sense, and seeing that interpretation, I mean, that Nigerian interpretation, I can see how that can draw a lot of people in who wouldn't normally, relate to Shakespeare at all. And I read somewhere that you're searching out these different stories that affect black communities more than others and trying to see where that fits in with Shakespeare. Tell us more about that and how that is reflected in your interpretation of Shakespeare. Yeah,
the themes and the stories in Shakespeare's texts are universal. We still fall in love. We still feel like outsiders. We still have issues with our families, gang warfare, same Romeo and Juliet, gangs fighting each other. In Britain, it's something that's happened for hundreds of years and still happens now, All of the plays have themes that resonate with the experience of what it is to be a black woman or a black person in Britain. And it's to show that those stories are human experiences, and anybody can go through a human experience. And I think by us exploring those stories, it's taking back the fact that those stories have only been told by white people previously, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does actually. But just going back to the origins of Mawa, I mean, Mawa means tomorrow, does it? It's a sort of Bantu language, Southern African language, that means tomorrow. But I know you mentioned this a little bit, but what made you decide that, we've got to set up Mawa? How did you come to choose that name and make the decision to go with it?
Well, we've had Shakespeare of the past, and we've had theatre of the past in the way that it's been done. And particularly in Britain, we've had a huge resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement in the last 12 months. Therefore, we wanted to make the theatre of tomorrow a theatre of change.
That's interesting. But how will your company Mawa attract audiences? Because again, I read somewhere that obviously you weren't just focusing on the black community. You want to tell stories from a black perspective, but for a universal audience. I mean, beyond the general idea that Shakespeare is for everyone, how will this break new, if you like, audience boundaries?
Well, traditional audiences that already engage with Shakespeare will be highly white, the traditional Shakespeare audience, so they already exist. We know that they will come, but by making it for black people, making it speak to black people, putting on stage black people that they know, you're opening out to those audiences that don't feel included, and that's what we aim to do.
And you know, the way that a lot of big sort of movie stars tend to return to the theatre, is that something you're planning on doing with sort of well-known black stars, especially black British stars like David Oyelowo, for example? Well, I suppose yours is an all-female cast, I mean, an all-female sort of group. So there's no chance of sort of blokes getting in there, is there?
It's just for the girls. But yeah, we'd love to work with British stars. We were really blessed. We had some people who've done some great stuff. And 100%, we want it to be for big stars, but we also want to reach out to people who are just starting their careers. That's as important to Mawa, that those people feel included and those people feel that the project is for them as well. So it will be for all sorts of actors, every stage of their career actors. We want to work with those.
Right, but it's not limited to black British female actors.
At the moment, we want to explore just the black British female experience. Moving forward, who knows? But right now, it's important to us that we keep exploring that world and the people who inhabit that world.
Okay, well, please stay with us. We want to talk with you a little bit about how this fits into Black History Month and all the rest of it. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the co-founder of the UK's first all-black, all-female Shakespeare theatre company. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu, and my first guest today, Jade Samuels, is the co-founder of Mawa, the UK's first all-black, all-female theatre company, which aims to make Shakespeare more accessible to underserved communities. It's getting a lot of interest in the UK, especially as this is officially Black History Month in Britain, a celebration that's happened for about 30 years in the UK now. The idea and concept for Black History Month was to formally recognize the contributions that people of African and Caribbean backgrounds have made to the UK over generations. And groups such as the Mawa Theatre Company are right up there with the best of them, especially as this year's theme is Proud to Be, with the aim of encouraging black people of all ages to tell their stories. And Jade Samuels, co-founder of Mawa, the UK's first all-black, all-female Shakespeare theatre company, is still with me on the line from Britain. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. What are you guys doing with Black History Month? I understand that there's some productions that you've designed to fit in there.
Yes, we are working with a mental health company called Applause for Thought Theatre. And we are doing sessions online with black women who work in theatre to open up the space for them to explore how things have affected them for the past 17, 18 months with COVID pandemic, and also how they can overcome imposter syndrome, something that people who work in the theatre industry and are black tend to experience, taking up those positions and those spaces that are very much ran and owned and filled with white people. So we want to explore that in a safe space with some experts that will help us all feel a bit better about that stuff.
Right. And how important do you think Black History Month is? I mean, focusing on 1 month of Black history in the UK, because some people have argued that there really ought to be an all year round concentration on Black history, given that they are part of the UK.
Wow. A lot of the history is white history. We're going to explore certain parts of Black history that we do in this country. And it is tokenistic, very much so. And I feel like it does just go, we've ticked that box. However, it's important. I think we need to give our Black artists, creatives, and just Black people who live in the country a space to express themselves and to, go into detail and in depth about what it is to be a Black person in this country and explore the experiences of Black people from times past. That's how I feel about it.
Right, and you mentioned when we were talking in the previous segment, Black Lives Matter, and things, I suppose, that became better known because of people like George Floyd. Is there a greater sense in the UK, a greater ease and comfort talking about and acknowledging and opening up the conversations among sort of non-Black people, white people, Asian people about, issues that affect Black people? And to that extent, I'm wondering whether that would also create an opening for a theatre like yours, which is all Black.
I think there is still a discomfort in people acknowledging things that have happened in the past and things that still happen in in Great Britain. I think post Black Lives Matter, there's a more of an awareness whether or not things have changed much. That leads to still be seen, and I think companies like Mawa are an urgent response to the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and to what has been happening in the country. And I think it's us taking a stand and making a statement and saying, essentially, we are here, we are not going in, we are a part of this country, but we want an experience and we want a position, we want a space to explore ourselves as artists. So, yeah.
So, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the relationship between Black and white in the UK is a pretty complex thing, isn't it? I mean, and the West in general. And in this context, you think that until it's not needed anymore, the UK does need Black History Month?
I think I would love a world where companies like Mawa would not need to exist, where tokenistic things like Black History Month were not necessary, but unfortunately we're not in that space, we're not even close to that space. So yes, Black History Month it's a necessary thing that has to happen for Black people to take up space and to let the Black people who live in Britain feel seen, even if it is tokenistic and even if it is only for a short amount of time and it has to be put in that space. But now, until things change, if you get rid of that, where will they be able to express themselves?
You're certainly clearly expressing yourself, aren't you, through Mawa? Because, I mean, I looked through the files and, I mean, there's incredible coverage of you in the British press. I mean, there's, the BBC, all kinds of people have done a lot of stuff on Mawa. What are you working on now beyond what you told us about sort of Black History Month? Give us a sense of where things are going in the next, I don't know, 6 months from now or so.
Short term, we have a project that we've not yet announced, so I can't say that. Long term, so within short to long term, we want to do actual theatre shows. We were not allowed to do that previously because all theatres have been closed in Britain until very recently. So now that they've opened up, that's what we're working towards next. I don't have a time limit, but we are working towards having stage shows. That's the short, long term. If that makes sense.
It does. It absolutely does. So if I were to sort of return to the UK and I wanted to come and see Mawa, I suppose I'd have to look out. There isn't sort of a regular performances. I'd have to look for specific shows and know when to. How do I sort of do that? Do you have a website? Is there somewhere we can go to get information about what you're doing?
Yes, we have the website Mawa Theatre. We have all of our social networks, social media. It's all Mawa Theatre Company. And you can check all of it out. We have videos which we filmed during the lockdown of lots of phenomenal actresses doing Shakespearean monologues. We have resources. We have many links to things that you can read. We have some great stuff, that examples of Black Shakespeare in Britain, resources for you to look at those. So yeah, please check us out.
Right, and what were you doing, Jade, before you formed Mawa? We've got about a minute.
Me personally, I'm a mum, got a daughter, she's 11. I'm an actress, and I part of an improv group which is made up of Black and Asian people. We make up things on the spot, and I produce theatre in Britain. And my whole thing is to get untold, unknown stories on the stage and make sure that people who may not see themselves necessarily as being a part of the British theatre experience can take up space.
Well, I want to thank you very much indeed for sharing the Mawa experience with us, and to congratulate you for setting up that theatre company. Jade Samuels is the co-founder and executive producer of the Mawa Theatre Company, and she was talking to me there from the UK.